Welcome back to Between Bells on Cheddar, everyone. I'm Baker Machado. Joining us now to continue our discussion of the coronavirus and its impact on all parts of American life is former Democratic presidential candidate and founder of Humanity Forward, Andrew Yang. Andrew, great to have you back here. So before we dive into the pandemic, I want to start with the New York presidential primary. Some new updates on this. You successfully sued to undo the New York State Board of Elections decision to effectively cancel the upcoming presidential primary in June. That effectively puts Bernie Sanders back on the ballot. So I'm curious, what was your snap reaction when you heard about this decision last night?
It's the right decision. I'm thrilled that a federal judge saw that depriving millions of New Yorkers of the right to vote is a very bad thing and wrong. And it's common sense. It's the law. So I'm thrilled with the ruling and thrilled that the primary is going to move forward.
Their initial reaction to this as to why they didn't want to do this was a public health concern. Do you agree with their assessment that there was a public health concern as to why they wanted to get rid of this primary?
We have vote by mail in effect where the government's already said that you can just say health as like the reason why you're absentee voting and then vote. So there should be no public health concern. And if you think about the precedent that this would set, if you just call off a primary, I mean, other states have postponed the primary, which makes sense. But canceling it altogether is undemocratic. And the federal judge saw it the same way.
All right, let's move back to the public health realm with the coronavirus in particular. I'm curious to get your thoughts on President Trump, not necessarily disbanding the health task force that he has created, but it's changing a lot. Now it's going to include potentially economists and more business people. We don't know if Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Deborah Birx are going to stay on this. What is your take on the president's reaction to the task force over the course of the last 24 hours?
Well, it's the same reaction that most of us have, which is, what the heck are you doing? I mean, it's not like this crisis is anywhere close to dissipating. I mean, there are many parts of the country that are dealing with it at higher levels. And so this task force being disbanded, unfortunately, feels very political, which is the last thing you need in this kind of public health crisis. I mean, we should be relying upon the guidance of doctors, scientists, public health experts, and certainly not sending the wrong message, which is saying that somehow we don't need this task force anymore. The need is as high as it's ever been.
There was reports, though, and even Vice President Mike Pence even was confirming that they were going to disband this. Would have that been a grave mistake for the president at this particular point to disband this task force, given the fact that the New York Times just reported the other day that we're expecting death rates for the coronavirus to double by June?
Of course it's a mistake, and of course he's doing it because he just doesn't like what he's hearing. He sees that that Americans are stuck with this catastrophic crisis that his administration fell asleep at the switch about months ago. I mean, we lost two months or more in time that we could have been building up the healthcare infrastructure, could have been tracing contacts for infected patients. And so now we're making moves, and you can sense that they're much more political than data driven. It's very, very disastrous for our trust in the kind of guidance we're getting.
One other thing that's really interesting, you really had universal basic income as a cornerstone of your presidential campaign. And we've actually been hearing it a lot more of late in Washington, maybe as a temporary fix for the amount of people who are struggling right now due to the coronavirus. What's your take on the fact that UBI is becoming such a big part of the conversation right now? And what is your take on if it might be a temporary fix right now?
Unfortunately, many of the jobs that are disappearing right now are gone for good. Our economy is not going to snap back into place like a rubber band. Jobs are not going to come back just like that. Many of these organizations are already saying that they're not going to bring a lot of people back. So we need to put money into people's hands right now for the duration of this crisis. And members of Congress are saying that it should be permanent until we reach pre-crisis levels of employment. I think that is a great next step, because unfortunately, the scars from this crisis are going to run long and deep in our labor force, throughout our economy. You can see it very clearly, not just in the numbers, but also in the fact that most of us are not going to feel as confident going out to restaurants, bars, concerts, movie theaters, and on for quite some time.
Yeah, I want to talk about what the next normal is going to look like for all of us, because we tend to look at GDP numbers, unemployment numbers, so many other big things out there. You've actually said the better way to measure how the economy is doing is look at metrics like labor force participation, mental health, all those other things rather than GDP. Do you think the aftermath of the coronavirus, those things are going to be taken much more seriously and a heavier weight on something like that than what we're currently looking at in terms of numbers now?
Yeah, we need to humanize our economy because right now you can see very clearly that companies are firing large numbers of people and being rewarded for it through their stock price. So we have to come clean and say, look, right now our economy is not actually designed to make us and our families and our communities stronger and healthier. It's designed to maximize the bottom line of the Amazons of the world who are paying very, very low levels, in Amazon's case, zero in taxes. Like this economy is increasingly stacked against people. And we have to realign the measurements of our economy to correspond to how we are doing, how our families are doing, our health, mental health, freedom from substance abuse, labor participation rates, environmental sustainability, the things that would actually measure our progress. This is a fundamental rewrite of our economy that's needed. And we need a Marshall Plan scale initiative to restore millions of jobs around the country that are not going to come back.
I want to pivot now to the election in particular. Obviously, the big recent news has been Tara Reade's allegations against former Vice President Joe Biden. You and many other Democrats have endorsed Joe Biden. And you also have a personal story as well with this. Your wife, Evelyn, came forward with a very powerful story of her own back in January. How do you approach thinking about Tara Reade's allegations moving forward in this election, given your personal experience to this with your wife?
Well, I would listen to Joe's statements, which is we have to take these sorts of things very seriously and look at them. But in this case, like you have to look at the context. And I think, I don't know anything anyone else doesn't know about this particular subject.
Let's talk and see if Joe Biden ends up winning the presidency. Would you take a job in a Joe Biden administration?
Yeah, I'm here to solve the biggest problems of our time. And if that's as part of a Biden administration, I would welcome that opportunity. I mean, we have massive problems. We can see they were massive even before this crisis. And now with this crisis, they're going to be even bigger. So we need to have all hands on deck. Again, we need to try and restore hope for millions of Americans around the country. Call it America 2.0, call it the Great Rebuild. But we need to go much, much bigger. And I believe that Joe is going to be the president to help us take on this monumental generational challenge.
Is there any particular post you maybe are interested in? Because you bring this much different perspective to politics, and I think that's why your candidacy was so refreshing to people. You look at, as you mentioned, there might be jobs that aren't even going to be coming back. You look at industries much differently. Do you feel like you can apply that to Washington?
I do. I think we can sense that our government is decades behind the curve in many, many respects. And I hope that I can help yank us forward and modernize some aspects of what the government is doing because we need it. For better or for worse, the government is going to be the center of the universe for the foreseeable future as we try and dig out of this crisis. Again, it's going to be with us for years. People shouldn't have any illusions that somehow we're going to rehire 30 million plus Americans, and the unemployment numbers actually understate the extent of the damage that's being felt in our communities. It breaks my heart. It's one reason why my organization, Humanity Forward's already given 1.4 million in direct economic relief to American families, and we're looking to do much more. If anyone wants to help us with that, go to movehumanityforward.com and let's help put Americans back on their feet. But it's going to be a long, long haul.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be. And of course, we're going to get those jobs numbers on Friday. There's also been, Andrew, a lot of speculation out there that you might be making a run for mayor of New York City. We know you live here in the city, and this would be in 2021. Can you definitively say whether you have any ambition to run for this job?
Well, I didn't say what I've been saying, which is I want to solve problems, and certainly executive roles are more attractive to me. But whether it's at a national level or the citywide level, I just want to do as much good as I can because we're in a very, very tough time right now.
All right, Andrew Yang, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.